I'm Jumoke, taking your calls this morning, 0800 731 2000. Now, next week sees the return of the Affordable Art Fair, which comes to Battersea Park. And my next guest, whose work is currently on display at the V&A, will be running a large-scale collective workshop throughout the event entitled Stitch, a journey which invites visitors to sit together and stitch their personal stories of a journey into a growing communal tapestry woven from their collective experiences. Well, joining us to tell us more is Ada Hardar. Thank you so much for joining us. This is quite a big undertaking and quite unusual in some ways. Do we already need to know how to stitch before we get there?
Hi, good morning. I'm just going to correct you because my name is Aya Haidar.
I beg your pardon.
That's okay. No, you don't need to know how to stitch at all. I think that people coming together and Karma Bank, which is an amazing charity that works with migrants and people who've experienced injustice, and so this community quilt will then be auctioned off in support of Karma Bank. And I was invited to work on a workshop to support this charity as part of the public program of the Affordable Art Fair, where people can come together and sit down and stitch a story of their journey.
And how that's what slightly baffles me. How are they going to do that?
Well, I think a lot of my work is rooted in displacement and migrant stories and refugee stories. Being the child of, my family was displaced and forced out of Lebanon, our native country, in the 80s. And so all my work is rooted in those stories and piecing together that history and that heritage. And I think for a lot of people, that the idea of being a refugee or being displaced in general is something that's so foreign, something that you kind of look at through your screen and you can't really understand. But I really believe that through kind of not so much empathy, but just being able to relate to something, then you can really understand a bigger picture. And everyone's got a journey. Every single person has got a journey. So starting from that premise, I'm inviting people to come and share their journey, whether it's a story of migration or displacement, whether it's your commute to work, whether it's your school run, whatever it is. Maybe it's an emotional journey. Maybe it's something that you've had to go through, your journey through grief, whatever it is. It's something that is personal. It's about bringing that to the tapestry.
And tapestries are, I have a tapestry in my house which was made by, I'm trying to think, I think it's made in Mexico. But it's all about musicians playing traditional instruments. And there is a resonance in tapestries because they really hold story, don't they? I mean, when you think about some of the big tapestries in some of the big houses here in the UK, it tells you about the people of the time. Are you hoping that it will have that kind of legacy?
Power of community. When people come together and sit together in a communal act of stitching together, it's a really powerful thing. So that alone, the experience of that alone, sitting next to a stranger and just having a conversation is something we're so disconnected from in our society today. But also taking it back historically, people kind of tend to think, stitching is very much rooted in the domestic. It's a women's practice, but it's an extremely political practice. Women historically would sit and stitch together within the home, but actually it's about the stories that they stitched with their children at their feet, and their children learnt their histories through these stories and through these conversations and then passed those on again. So heritage is preserved through stitch, specifically through the hands of women. And so sitting together as a collective and using our hands is something that we don't seem to do anymore. So I feel like it might be almost anarchic in a way to kind of invite people to come and sit down and slow down and work on something, whether it's for 2 minutes or 2 hours, and just kind of connect.
And I'm particularly moved by your Soulless series, which takes shoes and then things are embroidered onto them. Those stories, those mini stories, that must be particularly poignant to do.
Absolutely. So much of my work uses I think a lot about the materiality of the things that I embroider on. So many of the stories that I embroider on are using kind of recycled objects because, not really for an environmental perspective, although that is a really important one as well. Thinking about migrant communities and the fact that there isn't a sense of disposability in the objects that they hold. There just isn't. Every single item, every single scrap of fabric has to be reused because there isn't another option. So those objects that they have inherently tell a story before you even pass a needle through it. And so the Soulless series is a series of shoes, worn shoes, from migrant communities that have been disposed of because they're absolutely threadbare. They're completely worn down. And on them are stories of migrant stories having crossed the Mediterranean or having crossed certain parts of certain countries, Europe, all of that. So telling their stories on the soles of these worn shoes.
How, for you though, as the artist, when did it become apparent that this form of art is what you wanted to create?
When I was really little, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, pretty much every single day after school and definitely every single weekend. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And back then, I mean, she passed away recently and she was 99. So she was born in the 20s. And so, and she was born and raised in Lebanon, and she kind of came to the UK in the early 90s. And so she's lived an experience of coming from war-torn countries, but also traveling and moving a lot. And so from that generation, their use of materials is something that is very precious, I think. I always sat with her. She told me stories while she mended and repaired her clothes, or while she made something out of an old piece of fabric or whatever it is. And so just seeing that and sitting with it, and she kind of gave me a little scrap so that I can mend and repair something while she mended and repaired something bigger. And so just using that language of communication, where as we tell stories, as she told me stories, or I told her about my day, as we stitch, was something that was kind of inherent as part of my upbringing. And so it translated as I got older, I guess.
So this is a first of its kind experience at the Affordable Art Fair. You're welcoming all, even those who may not even know how to thread a needle.
Absolutely. I think that's where you start. I think it's really, really important to, be brave, start. And I think I personally think the biggest challenge for a lot of people will be to have that discipline to sit down for 10, 20 minutes, to take that time out of their busy lives, to just sit down on the floor and stitch. Just sit down and stitch. I don't even think it's the passing of the thread. I think that would be really simple for a lot of people, and we'll help them thread their needle and we'll help them kind of think. But I think where it all starts is about the conversation. So thinking about what a journey means to someone. What does that mean to you? I think that will be the challenge for a lot of people. It's just thinking a little bit and digging deep inside them to think, what do they want to place on this tapestry? What is the mark that they want to make?
Aya, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let me give people details so they'll know where to come. A Stitch a Journey will be coming to the Affordable Art Fair in Battersea Park from the 12th to the 16th of March. For more information, go to affordableartfair.com. That's affordableartfair.com. And for more information on Aya and her work, go to ayahaider.com. That's ayahaider.com.